Okay, guys, I'm going to be starting a war series to give you guys some insights into how I think about war and the philosophy behind it. A lot of war is like a chess match ahead of time, and in the war itself, it's a matter of picking the right matchups, but a big part of it is defense. So the way our alliance is structured is to try to funnel people into me or into one of the other high priority rooms so that it ends up being a kill zone with as many boosts as possible. So the goal is to have a really strong defense in here. Even that being said, I still have a lot of toons for offense, and that's because war is a really offensive mode. Basically, what I see a lot of is people. If everything was equal, you should probably be putting like 60 to 70% of your toons on offense because that's what it's geared for. There's just more offensive teams, and offense will always win if you're playing it right. And you're about equal level. So that being said, each alliance is different. If you're in a more offensive focused room, you definitely want to bring less than this. If you're in a more defensive focused room, you want to bring about this much, if not more or less, depending on what the goal of your teams are. So okay. Let me break down each one, and then I'll tell you what the goal of that team is. And in general, in Alliance War defense, your goal is one of two things. One is to win at least one matchup, or two, to make them use a team that they shouldn't be using. Either they use a overpowered team to kill it, or they're heavily, they bring in like a team that should be used for another meta team to counter this team instead. So one example here is the Wakandans here at 169k. They are not meant to be like a world beater by any means, but because I don't have a lot of T4s or anything into them, and they're pretty low level, my job is to make them a little bit annoying. Wakandas actually benefit a lot from deflects because M'Baku, every time he does a block, will heal. So it's just really, really good for him to get those deflects, and they use it a lot better than some of these other teams. I also have a really high level, relatively speaking, Black Panther. So if they bring in a bunch of toons that are like 28k to try to punch up, the Black Panther might just start rolling off kills and beating them. So this is one reason why it's in the front. Our alliance is not super great at Johnny on the spot boosting because it's just a lot of activity and a lot of effort to coordinate that. So I put this as the number one slot so it can make sure it gets a boost right away. My goal for this team is to bait out something really powerful, like if they have to use like a 180k Brotherhood, if they have to use a Nick Fury team, if they have to use a Captain Marvel team or anything like that, that'd be really good for this. If they're using Avengers or Kree or junk teams, then that's not so good. That's basically what they're supposed to do. Or unless those junk teams are like 230k or something like that just to beat this team. So that's the goal of this team, is to hopefully bait out something stronger. The next is the Min Guardians. Classic defense. Goal is to try to get a win here, if not multiple wins. I put it second because, again, I want things to get boosted. This is another team that benefits a lot from boosts because it means that they can't single target anything and nuke them. It's just a really, really solid team. Not really much more to say about it. Mine's 298k with the boost here, so you can see that it actually gets a little scary at that point. Around 275k is when people have to start really thinking about what they're bringing into it, because they can't just rely on overpowering it with like a straight Brotherhood. If you're doing that, you're relying a lot on luck. It might be 50-50, especially with the boost. So that's that. X-Men here. I would actually bring these guys on offense if I was in a smaller room. Same thing with Condas, to be honest. But the goal for this one is to annoy the opponent. Wolverine is one of the more annoying toons in the game for defense because of his heal and sustain. Paired with Psylocke, it just makes it even more annoying. Colossus is super annoying tank to deal with. My goal here, though, is mainly to confuse an opponent. A lot of guys probably haven't dealt with X-Men teams that often, and if they haven't, they might not know what to take into it. So the idea is that they might make a mistake or they might overkill it. Again, it's not really meant to win the battle. It's just meant to hopefully make them use something like 180k or something stronger than they should have. Kree is hopefully designed to win against somebody that doesn't know what they're doing and underestimates how much damage output they have. So if you bring in something like a 130k team or 140k team thinking you're going to punch up against Kree, and let's say you bring something like a little bit of control to it, and they don't realize Ronin cleanses, they don't realize Noble and Reaper combo does a lot of damage. I also put Cyborg in here over Oracle instead because I don't want the sustain, I want the extra burst damage, because if you bring in something like Mystic Controllers, let's say, and I burst down one of the guys right away, and then maybe Cyborg half the lives of someone else, that's really scary, and that can really put a damper and win a battle right there. So that's the goal of that team. Defenders, pretty standard. Not going to say too much about them other than that they're standard. Mine's 270k. There's nothing to sneeze about, but it's also nothing to write home about. Most likely this is going to bait a Fury team or a really high-level Min Guardians team at like 250k or something like that, or maybe a Guardians or whatever. That's pretty normal. If they bait out a Brotherhood, high-level Brotherhood, that's great. If they bait out anything better than that, even Min Guardians is a pretty good win trade-off. If the opponent uses like a low-level Fury team, like a 200k Fury team on this, then that's kind of like, dang, that's what they're supposed to do. So ideally they get the boost, so at least they want to clear the boost before they do that, but sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Next is Hand. Hand is a pretty much a junk team. It's okay to like confuse people that don't know how to fight Hand if like they're trying to use like 100k toons or something like that. It's just not really good. Or if they're like trying to do something and they don't understand how the dodge mechanic works or stealth mechanic works or something like that, it might beat them, but most likely it's going to lose. It's mostly just a filler team here that I wanted to put in, so they didn't have to put in a default win team. My next team here is the Brawlers using Ms. Marvel, and Captain Marvel and America Chavez. This is a really, really strong team on offense as well. I use it on defense because Captain Marvel is amazing. She's a really, really, really great defensive toon, even by herself. If you really underestimate her, you can really end up in a bad situation. So that's why I put her on defense. I like it with the Brawlers because Ms. Marvel helps protect her in case they're trying to do some sort of Fury rewind or something like that, or if they try to do Magneto and they try to focus her down, there's a good chance Ms. Marvel taunts and is able to absorb some of that stuff. America Chavez is good because he gives health buff to Captain Marvel, so that at the start of the match she has like way more chance to do things. So that's kind of the purpose of it. I'm actually thinking about breaking this team up because Captain Marvel could be better somewhere a solo toon boosting someone else, which might be useful. And then I could bring Brawlers on offense, which would be another offense team that I could use. The goal of this team, again, is to make them bring out a really heavy-duty team or potentially underestimate Captain Marvel and lose. One thing I'm trying to do is something like, if they have to use a Brotherhood, if they have to use Ultron, if they have to use anything good, that's really good. If they're using like a medium-level Fury team, that kind of sucks. That's what you're kind of supposed to do for this. If they're using anything else that's medium, that's good, or that's that can beat this team, then that's a good win for them. Finally, my last team is Ultron. This is meant to be like a mediocre Ultron team. It's not supposed to be like Min Guardians with Ultron instead of Thanos. And essentially, the reason why I'm picking these guys is to try to like bait them into losing one battle. That's the goal. I want them to use 2 teams to beat this. Most likely it does. Sometimes 3 teams because they'll clear the buff boost if there's a boost on there, and then they'll like try to kill it, and then they'll actually kill it. If you notice, I don't have the border around my character, so my goal is to like confuse them into thinking I don't have Ultron, and all of a sudden it pops them on him on the last node there. So that's the goal, and we'll see how it works. This actually works really well for me, but it usually only gets like 1 or 2 wins there. It's rarely you get that like train going like you sometimes see with Min Guardians or Captain Marvel if they don't know what they're bringing into it. So yeah, that's basically it. The order that I put these in, again, is to like try to get teams that I want to be boosted right away, and then behind that sometimes mix in like a little bit of order so they don't know what to expect. My goal is that maybe they're like, oh, this 163 Kree team, well, what if he has something stronger behind it? And then maybe after the defender is like, oh, okay, I can overkill this because he probably doesn't have much behind that, or maybe he has something even stronger behind that, so I'm trying to take in something too weak, and then I lose. And then they see the hand and like, okay, maybe that was the last big one, so I can just like finish them off, and all of a sudden we spring up Brawlers on them. I like mixing this stuff in just so that they're not like seeing, oh, this is the strongest team, oh, it's more and more stronger, or more weaker, or whatever like that. So mixing that in just gives them another thing to think about. So yeah, that's my defense, and the next one will cover some of the tactics that we used in the war.